1-game lead for Vincent Keymer.
And I think that is a good, solid hold from Vincent. I actually, in some ways, find that game really impressive from Vincent because the pawn structure was terrible throughout, and somehow he managed to navigate an awful, like doubled isolated pawns, things loose all over the place. It looked like achieving that e5 by Wesley was going to mark the end, but he made this ultra creative h4 g5 pawn sacrifice work. So all in all, a pretty creative game from Vincent, who was definitely much worse at times, and he just navigated.
Yep. Couldn't agree more. And even though he's only at 1 game, he's got to be feeling pretty jubilant about the fact that Wesley has already changed openings, right? He didn't go back to the Leningrad Dutch knowing that Vincent should have really crushed him in that game. Wesley got away with one in the last time Vincent was white. So I'm just noting the mini game within the game here that Vincent is sort of putting Wesley on his back heels to change openings already.
Yeah, exactly right. Talk about adaptability, and it does make sense. You don't want to make it to the bullet segment without having solved some of the problems and theoretical discussions in the longer portions, because then you're playing on pure instinct, and if you haven't sorted things out, you're naturally just going to default to playing the exact same variations that you have thus far. We're all guilty of that. Even if you're playing into like a lost position, our brains just we just keep playing into it unless we're making an active change.
Yep. No, it's so true. There are things about the format that have their own meta. Sometimes you see players use the clock, right? They make endgames go out longer to try to get time off that total ticking down timer that you can see next to the 5+1 portion. That's one of the games within the games in the SEC. The other one I think Amon highlighted is really underrated, that how the players poke and prod for what they're going to do in the opening stage in Bullet is kind of happening now, and it can really pay off, and you sort of forget that they were sort of finding those weaknesses a couple hours ago. So I love that point. Yeah, and here we go. Vincent in a decent position. What is happening now? A very weird King's Indian transition.
Yeah, Vincent is making a point that he wants to play these C4 systems, so he's bringing out the English so far in the match. Not to say that we're going to see that all the way throughout, but that's how he's starting, and he's seeing how Wesley is reacting. Bishop pair for black here, but definitely a position I would probably say white's pretty comfortable with. The pawn can make it up to d4 and rook to e1. h3 just stopping bishop g4. Maybe I think an opposite bishop position might have been decent for black. So I would expect moves like d4, rook e1, bishop d3, etc. Go from there. Maybe try to trade light squared bishops if you're white.
Yeah, and maybe eventually e5 at the end of your idea where the pawns advance and white uses the center. But all right, Wesley's not sitting around, though. He plays a5. He's going to get some counterplay on the queen side. And the thing I really don't like about black's position is the c7 pawn. This feels like a closed Sicilian reversed, where black has this big problem on c7 instead of white's pawn on c2. So, okay, what's the idea here on bishop d3?
I think maybe a more like ambitious or direct way to defend and attack would have been queen c2, hitting c7, guarding e4. I like the move bishop d3. I suggested it earlier, so I can definitely understand it. The follow-up maybe rook e1, but the move g4 here is a very serious one. So if you play rook e1, don't think that g4 is not coming. Pawn to g4 takes, bishop takes, loosens up not only the knight, but then the d4 pawn. I actually think that g4 is a serious plan, or even the computer saying h5. Let's make it even deadlier.
And Wesley agrees with the computer, but your idea in principle is the point. G4 is coming. This is hard to deal with. And now, okay, you voluntarily retreat, but that just gives me d4 if we're into that. So, so yeah, I mean, you could take and then bring the queen to f6. Okay, there are some fun little tactics to keep in mind here if the queen and bishop start doing work on h7, but we like black's chances a lot more every time the position opens up because Wesley has the bishop pair and this dark square bishop.
Yeah, g4, wow. And I mean, what's the idea after knight takes g4? So the d-pawn is still hanging, but I also think that instead of just taking on d4 and giving up h5, playing g4 is technically another way of losing a pawn, and he's going to regain it on d4. So he's just playing all these much better moves bring the knight to g4, take the tempo with queen h4, and if you play something like knight h2, now it's time to even things up with bishop takes d4.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Sometimes we're translating the computer blue arrow, which if you don't speak chess.com game review, blue arrow means that's the one move that needs to be played to maintain the current evaluation. Wesley's finding all of those best moves, so we don't even have to explain it. As Aman said, the knight is attacked. If it moves, it no longer guards f2, which means bishop takes d4 is even more powerful. The queen and bishop are doing work. This could be the best chance Wesley's had yet in the match to get a dub.
Yeah, dare I say Wesley is just understanding the position a little bit better than Vincent in this particular one. He immediately locked in on the plan g5, h5, g4 sacrifice with queen h4. These did not, like, he didn't spend a lot of time on these moves. He just knows they're part of the position. I was going to say bishop b6. He might try to just save that bishop. The computer wanted something more direct, but bishop b6 was almost what I expected.
It's a very human move because of the move you see here, right? Knight f3 would have been a fork to the bishop and queen. So I wonder if there were more direct ways to bring in pressure here. But still, regardless of the eval getting a little closer to 50-50, this still remains a very tough position for white. Wow, e5 would be a move for Bronstein to be happy, right? A little bit of a positional clearance sacrifice, and then maybe you blockade on the light squares. Vincent doesn't find it.
Yeah, understandable, but I will say, if everyone just makes kind of normal looking moves, I do think Wesley is going to crash through. King g7, rook h8, even the other rook swinging over to g8, followed by king f8. Good luck defending both of those rooks on the open lines, Danny. There's just no chance there.
You're talking freestyle pressure here, right? You're putting the rooks on G and H and the king on F8, castling by hand the old and slow way. But yeah, black's pressure is very real, which is why Vincent tries to get the queens off. What's funny is even if you get the queens off here, black is still very happy with the bishop pair and he does that. But the bishop now on b6 guards that one weakness I said earlier was a real problem in this structure, talking about a close Sicilian reverse. So Wesley doesn't have that problem. Bishop takes care of it. He's the one with all the winning chances here.
Absolutely, and he's preventing the e5 move, which is always a nice one. The rooks for white are not coordinated too well. They're disconnected. The bishop on b1 is really just performing a defensive duty, guarding the e-pawn. It's really up to Wesley how you want to continue from here. You can double rooks, sort of play rook to a3, just slowly invade on the a file. You can swing over to the king side, but it doesn't look like that's where the action is anymore.
Interesting to play rook a1, and maybe even more interesting, Vincent knows the threat. The idea was rook takes e4, everybody, because the bishop was pinned. And so Vincent immediately spotted that and defended his rook. But it just shows how close I think white's position is, Aman, to maybe falling apart here. There are tactics in the air. You have to be very careful with the bishops and the rook applying pressure.
Yeah, this is not a comfortable position, but Vincent, he has some ideas. The nice thing about a bad position sometimes is pretty clear what you're supposed to do. So maybe bishop I want to say bishop d3 here to try to trade. Ooh.
So hard to play this. What is the reason? Is it just like king up to e5? Normally, okay, no, it wasn't. That was the move I played. Wesley liked it, but obviously not a good move. So we'll look at it. But yeah, bishop.
I'm almost looking at rook a2.
There's a win. Oh, that's it. Okay, so that's the same win, I think, from before. That bishop on b1 is pinned. So I think
it's less about the f2 pawn when the rook was on f3 and more about just bringing the pieces in. Rook a2 allows it to go to b2 and just everything hangs.
Yeah, and I think this is the idea that has been lurking all along. Too much threats. Bishop takes f2, by the way, the most immediate if you're keeping score at home. And I think Vincent is just running out of defensive
b1
resources.
Is not playing, Danny. That's the problem, is that it's guarding e4. It takes on a2. It's just guarding d5. It's doing nothing. And look at those two black bishops. It's not comparable, the quality of the pieces.
Yeah. Oh, man. Vincent thinking of a move. Okay, I was going to say he's thinking of a last-second check, either rook h5 or knight f3 check, but that's all it is a last-second check. And unfortunately for Vincent, this isn't bullet, so it's not going to make Wesley flag, and he still just has no way to deal with these threats.
Yep. We've seen shots from both of them in the early stages of the match here. I think that Vincent has been impressive, but in this particular game, it's the first time we really saw Wesley take over and just understand what the position demanded a lot more. Look at that. I mean, not going to miss those basic tactics there. And I think there's a little bit of work to do, but everything is falling in the position.
Yeah, probably debating between bishop d3 and just taking the pawn right away. I'm not sure. The problem with bishop d3, I think, is you can't actually take on e4 right away, but Wesley is obviously calculating it to be sure. Yeah, he does just take b4.
Yeah, white doesn't have a pass pawn, so there's nothing really dangerous about white's position. Yeah. You just have to organize your bishops well here.
Yeah. The c7 pawn remains the only thing that stops you from coordinating well. Maybe at some point, I was just going to say, maybe at some point you push the c pawn to solve it, but no, he plays an even more disciplined move. Bishop c5, and then you push him, baby. Let's go, baby. Yeah.
He's going to push this pretty much, as far as he can go, and the bishop can always defend on d4, which is why we see rook to d3. Now, cutting off that rook.
Bishop coming to, okay, he goes to d1. I thought maybe, oh, nice move. If the king leaves f1, you get a check followed by a queen. Vincent really playing it out for good measure, but it's just a piece, and easy money for Wesley at this point.
That was great technique from Wesley there, just showcasing how to use the bishops and why two bishops easily overpower one rook.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's going to peter out a little bit. I wonder if we're already in match strategy. I wonder how Vincent thinks about the 5. Okay, well, there he just hangs his rook. I was going to say, I wonder how Vincent thinks about the 5